Hello, welcome to our weekly astro forecast. This is Madrona's Pulse Teachings, and I am Iris. And we are talking about November 11th through November 17th. So this, of course, includes the astro weather of our Taurus full moon. I released a video on that full moon yesterday that was kind of long, so I'm not going to talk about the full moon in all of its aspects so much in this, but I am going to talk about the astro weather that is pulling us into that full moon and also what's coming just after it. Because we're in it. We're in November. We know this. We know that there's a lot going on. And there is some really big energy with this full moon, and we're going to be being kind of pulled into it and working with it all week. So let's just get into it. I hope that you're doing well when you're watching this. I hope that you are rolling with it. To be honest, when I was sitting with the chart before I came to make this, part of what came up for me is that we are just rolling with it this week. And so let's see if we can get a little bit of clarity around that though. So we're going to start off on the 11th with our sun in conjunct Chiron. Okay, so our sun is in Scorpio, 20 degrees of Scorpio, and it is in conjunct a Chiron who has just moved back to being in the 19 degree. It's just moved out of 20 degrees, so it's at 1959 as it starts. But this is significant because Chiron is going to move to exactly 19 degrees and 0 minutes. It's retrograde. This is later in December when it stations direct. But that 19 degree point of Aries, which is where Chiron is, takes us back to our April 2024 solar eclipse. So I can't really believe we're here talking about it because it's been months where I've kept kind of dropping that. Remember, Chiron's going to come back to that 19 degrees point of Aries. So especially if you have anything at 19 degrees of Aries, those stories are coming up in a new way. But as we are starting this week off, just knowing that, the sun in conjunct Aries, that the Chiron in Aries, that can be a little bit of a push and pull. That can be kind of tweaking some tender spots. That can be bringing some big stuff up. It could be in intimate relationships. It could be between our own desires and needs and, just the intimate relationships or just our intimacies in this life. So we are starting this week out with that little kind of tender push and pull moment. The sun's going to keep moving and it's going to pass throughout the week. We also start out this week with a conversation that's lasting the whole week and is really significant to our full moon on the 15th, and that is Mercury. So Mercury in Sagittarius, we start the week out with Mercury squaring Saturn, and on the 11th they're in their exact square. Saturn is retrograde. Saturn stations direct on the 15th in Pisces on the day of the full moon. So this is a major conversation this week. And the square is exact between Saturn and Mercury as we begin this week. It's going to hold for the whole week. It's still going to be in play during that full moon. And what's going to also come into that conversation as Mercury moves through Sagittarius is it's going to come into a stronger and stronger opposition with Jupiter. So we've got this conversation between Mercury and Sagittarius. Mercury is in its pre-shadow retrograde. It's going to go retrograde on the 25th of November. It is opposite Jupiter. That exact opposition is going to be at the end of this week. And they're both squaring Saturn, who is stationing direct on the 15th. So this is one of our major kind of stories, cosmic stories that's playing out in the nitty-gritty of this week. And this conversation could bring up some nitty-gritty. Okay, so especially we start the week out with that square between Mercury and Sag and that Saturn and Pisces. Now, part of the reason there could be kind of some wires getting crossed. There could be just a little bit of confusion. There could be not totally knowing which way you want to go and or feeling like your direction is shifting. And this is just because as we're moving up towards the 15th, that Saturn is just sitting still. And it is in those, few days right before it stations direct and those few days after, which is this week, when, especially with Saturn and Pisces, we can feel a little disoriented. We can just, and that can really be in the mind. And so with literally our archetype of the mind and of our voice, Mercury squaring that Saturn, there could be some things getting worked out. And so here it's just knowing all week long, if you're coming up against resistance, do not push through. Do not push through the resistance, whether it is miscommunication, whether it is not totally knowing how you want to move forward, however it's coming up. If there's resistance, not pushing through, but pulling back. Now that said, there also could be clarity that comes up. I mean, Saturn is stationing direct. There could be really great insights. They also might have changed from what your original plans were. So just being open to the fact that plans could be changing, directions could be shifting. We might have to improvise a little bit, but this conversation between Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn is carrying us through all week, and it's carrying us through the full moon. And the other big conversation is Venus. Okay, so Venus is really important this week because she is also the ruler of the Taurus full moon. And on the 11th, so starting the week out, Venus enters Capricorn. Okay, so Venus leaves Sagittarius, she enters Capricorn. Venus in Capricorn is very, very different than Venus in Sagittarius. Venus in Sagittarius wants to expand. She wants to be excited about ideas and big questions. She's a strong adventurer in that sign. Then she comes into Capricorn, and Venus kind of wants to get to work when she's in Capricorn around her own goals and her own values. And she really wants to align her goals to her values, okay? And Venus' story this week is, so she moves into Capricorn. And so we are paying attention to our values. We're paying attention to also feeling, is there a shift, Is there something that you're ready to kind of, like you feel like you're almost ready to get to work on? Now, I just spent 4 minutes or so talking about how Mercury and Saturn and Jupiter, that we might have a stop and a go, we might have a push and a pull, we might not know where we're going. So we're feeling into the energies working. This is the multi-layering that is archetypal astrology, and honoring, letting go what we feel we can let go of. Okay, Saturn stationing direct this week also might show us what we've been in the process of letting go of. And now it's like, like that little hangnail, it's been there, whew, it's gone, and there's relief, and we don't need to have our attention directed where it was. And so we do know some of those places we can move ahead. And Venus wants to help us kind of focus our goals aligning to our values, not someone else's values, so that we can start imagining where we want to go, knowing that our path there is totally going to change. Totally going to change throughout December 2025, 2026. But in this moment, we might start having a stronger idea of where we're going. And as Venus moves through this week, she's going to inconjunct our Mars. Remember, sweet Mars, opposite Pluto. So this week, the tension between Pluto and Mars releases just in time for us to come into a wild full moon. And that Mars, who's going to move to 3 degrees of Leo, is going to, on the 13th, begin an inconjunct with Venus. That is really going to hold through the full moon. Okay? And then both Mars and Venus are going to be talking to the nodes of the moon. So Mars is going to be trining the north node and sextiling the south node, that north node in Aries. So there is some strong fire energy coming up around our own creative fires. And there's that inconjunct between, at the same time, Mars and Venus. So Mars in Leo wants to have fun, wants to go, wants to, bring a lot of action to its own creativity. And it's not, Mars in Leo just wants to be creative. It wants that spark. Venus in Capricorn is much more reserved. than Mars in Leo. And so there is a push and pull between that kind of drive and a much more reserved, I don't know about that, says Venus. That's a great idea. That's a great project, but that's not going to help us get where we're going. So they're having a little bit of a push and pull, and they're both talking to the nodes because Venus is squaring the nodes this week. Okay, so she is squaring that North Node in Aries and that South Node in Libra. And so that push and pull conversation, because both Mars and Venus are talking to the nodes, is really important. So it also might be working something out. You know, it might, and don't, let's not forget that this Mars has just been opposite Pluto, and we have just had some major aspects of our own drive reworked, shown to us, and this is in process. And this Mars, who might be like, yeah, I'm going this way. I got this creative idea. This is my calling. This is my sense of self. That Mars is about to station retrograde in a little bit. So whatever Mars is thinking it's got to do, it's not totally what it's got to do. It might be a version of it, but it's got to go way back into Cancer and then move forward into next year, 2025, before it's really ready to go ahead into that party that it's ready for. So Venus has got a little bit of an upper hand on the wisdom right now. So we do want to listen to that Venus and, you know, allow there to be a little bit of seriousness, especially around your own values and around kind of sticking to, okay, I might be excited about this, but I'm going to focus here. Especially because that Venus rules our full moon, which brings us this conversation between Mars and Venus, which is also a conversation between our own kind of divine masculine, divine feminine merging and diverging within us this week, brings us into the 15th to the full moon. Okay. And then of course we are going to have a full moon conjunct Uranus. And that is really important right there because there is this conversation between the outer planets going on. Uranus has moved back a little bit because it's retrograde, but it is sextiling Neptune and it is trine Pluto. And so when it conjuncts that moon, it makes that outer planet conversation very personal. So personal that we want to be mindful that everyone is having a very personal conversation with the outer planets this week. Everyone is experiencing a pre-shadow Mercury square, a Saturn stationing direct opposite a Jupiter retrograde. Everyone is got a lot going on. And so if there are sparks, if there is tensions that you encounter, it really, you know, I always say it is be mindful, right? Because sometimes we just want to step back. We want to take a beat. We want to be like, I'm going to go for a walk and I will talk to you later. And other times the energy is helping us to kind of have a breakthrough and sometimes use our voice. And so we need to trust. And I find one of the best ways to know which direction to go. Do I take a beat? Do I kind of honor what wants to be expressed? Is listening to the body. Because sometimes we get pulled into oh, I need to just say this and and really if we listen to the body's like, oh, look at that breath I just got, slowing down and listen to the body, and the body is like, let's just go for that walk, right? And then maybe on the walk we get a little reflection, and then maybe we write our words. And sometimes whatever that knot of tension was there, even if it's relational, writing our words can sometimes release it without even having to send them to the other person. Sometimes it's all about what we need to witness for ourselves, and there the body can be really amazing in supporting us to witness that. So just knowing that there's all that energy, and you might want to kind of really check in with how you want to respond if and when certain tension-filled situations arrive around the 15th this week. It's all leading us towards it. And that's how I got into this, because everyone is having this very personal moment with the outer planet conversation. And this is Uranus. This can be wild card energy. It is ultimately awakening energy, right? So that kind of puts everything that I was talking about into a little bit of perspective, because there's something that can awaken this week. There's something that can come, and this is going to really depend on where you have kind of 24, 25 degrees of Uranus, of 24 degrees of Uranus, where you have 24, 25 degrees of Taurus in your chart, which is opposite the sun for the full moon, which is at 24 degrees of Scorpio. So this illumination is wanting to happen in the Scorpio-Taurus axis of your chart. And that is around our own self-sufficiency. Taurus brings us into our own body, into our own values. There is a heightened emphasis on values this week. Our values. We might have awakenings around our own values versus those of the people and the social institutions that we are entwined within. And we might need to pull back, we might need to loosen, we might need to find some breathing room between ourselves and other people's values or institutions' values, because something is wanting to break free in that Taurus realm, okay? Of course, the Taurus and Scorpio axis, that's also our own self-sufficiency, and then how we merge with others. It's our own kind of values, income making, and then also how we are entwined with others, whether that's emotionally and or financially. So all of that kind of shared emotion, shared property, shared terrain, and then that's all in the Scorpio realms. And then in that Taurus area of your chart is where there is this full moon illumination that could be a bit radical. Okay. And so again, some of that energy that's leading us to that this week, which is really that conversation of Mercury squaring Saturn and coming into its opposition with Jupiter, that could be where there could be, the confusions could be showing us around that. And also 15th of November, Saturn stations direct. And so this is really significant because that Saturn retrograde has been wanting to help us come into a new alignment with ultimately our soul's path, our soul's journey. And Saturn stations direct. The idea being that slowly we do have forward movement. Now we have forward movement as Mercury is going to station retrograde on November 25th, so not this week, later. So of course it's kind of non-linear, but on a soul level, we might actually have glimpses of where we are heading and just trusting the process that's unfolding. And of course, then after the full moon, the sun is going to keep moving through Scorpio, and then the moon is going to move on. It's going to move into Gemini. But the sun is going to, on the 16th and 17th, it's going to be in its exact opposition with Uranus. So that Uranus energy is strong throughout the whole week. I mean, it's already strong. It's coming. And there could be this radical awakening, especially that relates to our own identities. So just really embracing that this week. Uranus can be big energy. Uranus can also show us how we have to suddenly release things, or we have to just suddenly change directions. It can work in all sorts of ways. It can also kind of be like, bang, I'm sick and I cancel my plans, and then something kind of leaves my psyche as something leaves my body. So there's all different ways that Uranus works, and it usually is not totally what we are expecting. And then of course, we end the week as Mercury is approaching its exact opposition with Jupiter, okay, which is again bringing us into reconsideration of plans, and also can just be a bit of a stickiness in our mind. And then it is the 17th of November, and we end the week 2 days before Pluto enters into Aquarius. And I'm going to have more videos about Pluto entering into Aquarius. But it really is a moment. We end this week in this kind of moment. And I do really encourage you, even if you are someone that is sitting there and is like, I cannot wait for Pluto to be out of Capricorn, I really encourage honoring Pluto and Capricorn as we move to the end of this stage, because it is a massive shift that is ending. And this is the thing, Pluto is not separate from us. The archetypes are never separate from us. Non-archetypal astrology. They are reflecting and mirroring and and co-creating aspects of ourselves all the time in very complicated, multidimensional, non-linear ways. And so when we say that we don't like a planet, we are saying that there's a part of ourself that we also don't like. And one of the greatest healing journeys is learning to love everything about ourselves. Everything. The bits that we are told we're not supposed to love, the bits that we think we can't, the bits that are hard. And so the planets can really support us in this journey of radical awakening. And there is nothing like a Taurus full moon conjunct Uranus to open us along a path of radical awakening. And if Pluto and Capricorn brought a lot of struggle, honoring yourself for making the journey, honoring yourself for whatever you let go of, for the times that like you just had to grit your teeth and manage, and maybe you're in one of those times right now, for the times that you had to just go into seasons of grief, for the times that you had heightened energy and you were able to be creative, for all of it, just honoring it all, not needing to attach story to any of it, not needing to say that it was bad or good, just honoring it, because we're honoring the process that we are all part of. And that opens us up to a really lovely way of welcoming the birthing of Pluto into Aquarius. And on that note, I'm going to leave you with that. It's a mighty time. Lots of love.